Michael?
Yes, peppermint tea. It's not
Tea.
real. It's not real tea. It's just peppermint.
That's good, good, good. We are here. It's the Unified Tea Drinkers meeting. Everybody here forced to drink tea. We
Like
don't have any
here's my
excuses.
coffee.
Oh, come on! Didn't you see the memo? Okay, well, it's also the BetaSaaSers
I
AutoGraders
did.
meeting.
I'm just a contrarian.
Ah, well, I won't contradict that. The it's Sam, it's Michael and Richard and Armando not available. Rose may join us. We will see. Yeah, I mean, I've been in meetings recently trying to get like an overview agenda set at the beginning, but I wonder if that's actually counterproductive. I don't know. Maybe it's just all like let it hang out. I guess that only items on my mind. Well, we're seeing further slow. I don't know if it's steady, but slow progress towards the edX re-releasing the MOOC. I think Berkeley is now happy, and we now. I don't know. There was some. Anyway, I mean, I've kind of moving towards trying to slim down the AV 102 course to make it just an introduction for TAs and to the other material to be moved out. I've got a couple of people helping me process the additional feedback that we have from Berkeley about changes we have to make to the main course. Little slow and steady things. I mean, I'm in the absence of a start date from edX, it's difficult to prioritize planning for that, but we move step by step towards that. Otherwise, yeah, I'm trying to work with Amanda to talk about this issue that we have for the AutoGraders, which we need the logging addressed. And sort of, we basically, I mean, lots of logs generated, and we need to have a policy about, okay, are we going to cap the log size that we want to keep? We want to keep 20 gigabytes of logs, and then basically the oldest ones get deleted, or what do we do? There's basically, because if we run out of space on the AutoGraders, they go down. Yeah, that's pretty much it from my side as regards MOOCs and graders. Richard, anything on
Does
your
Armando
mind?
have any? Just to pick up on that, so does he have like a set of TAs to be working on stuff, or is that
Well, he has some PhD students. I mean, he has who doing this, that, and the other. He does at the moment. He's not running the class. I don't believe he has any
right?
TAs to work on the AutoGraders.
Okay,
So
because there was a lot of good stuff that was generated. When I say good, I mean at least in results. Forgetting about the quality and organization, a lot of good stuff in terms of the assignments and the auto graders and all that. And it would be nice to look at in improving and perfecting that in some way. So,
yeah.
and
You mean the whole AutoGrader framework? Yeah. I mean, it would
I
be.
mean, not only no, I mean more than the framework. I know there's a lot of rumbling about. I'm talking about the individual tasks. I mean, the what it tests and the feedback.
The individual assignments, you mean?
Right. I would. That's more what I'm thinking of. That's
Yeah,
more.
yeah. Indeed,
And
and yeah, I think that there's no. I mean, Amanda talks about wanting to generate, like a new microservices assignment and a JavaScript assignment, and in principle, he's got time because he's not teaching to kind of come up
right.
with new assignment ideas. I mean, they've got a section that are being taught in the summer by this other person, and so on. I mean, we will see. Yeah,
Okay.
there's as I mean, we've heard that sort of talk before, but we'll see what comes along. Really, I mean, certainly my superficial plan is that as soon as we've got a new edX run on the cards, that will spawn, cause me to start working through all of the assignments from the beginning again. And rather than doing videos this time, my temptation is to try and get text walkthroughs of each of them.
Okay.
I don't know if that's. But I get the sense that there's perhaps more demand for having text walkthroughs of the solutions than there are for video walkthroughs of the solutions. Although they're a useful resource to have. I don't know. Maybe I should sensibly be devoting my efforts towards creating new assignments or upgrading the assignments. Somehow, yeah, the path of least resistance is to try and, like, when there's a course, to work through the thing in sequence to kind
Right.
of. What I find difficult about the assignment standalone is, unless I've just worked, like, for example, let's say you just take the fourth assignment or assignment on BDD and Cucumber, unless I've just previously done the preceding three assignments, I'm not in the right headspace to really assess
Right.
you know, what changes to make. Because if you start making changes in the assignments in isolation, you end up accidentally introducing things that students are actually not ready for because of the point pathway they've come to it, or you remove things that they kind of needed, or what have you. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess there's the idea that, you know, these assignments are acknowledged to be just like, you know, very imperfect, and the idea is, well, you know, this just gets them through a little bit of a learning process, and they really learn the stuff when they do their projects. And that's sort of the idea, but it doesn't work as well for me, because a lot of the people don't follow through with projects using these technologies.
right, yeah. I mean, the interesting thing is I mean, I kind of, I mean, partly with the whole Agile Ventures thing, I've kind of been, oh, you know, all of these little assignments are kind of, they're so unrealistic, and I kind of get frustrated by the, you know, the isolated components of things that they are. Although when I look back at it, actually, you know, like, I mean, I remember some people trying to introduce Cucumber and stuff to me prior to me having taken the MOOC, and me sort of being, oh, that's kind of interesting, but not quite getting it or adopting it. And it was actually the first run of the MOOC where I kind of like forced myself to kind of get the Cucumber working flow, and really kind of like, it fell out the difference between Cucumber and Capybara and RSpec and so on. In some ways, it was sort of like in spite of the assignments rather than because of them. I mean, I didn't feel that I was guided to that understanding,
Right?
because it was more like, oh, I'm just desperately trying to get this thing to work here, and I'm in the middle of debugging. Like I'm stopped inside of this Cucumber step, and I've got all these commands, like, you know, expect and has content and visits, and which is from which, and I kind of had to fall back on my own resources to kind of work out
Right.
where they all come from. But at least by going through, you know, I was in that kind of context, and that certainly did provide, you know, a framework from which I then subsequently now find very easy to work in, and I feel very comfortable with these technologies as a consequence of going through that. But I think it was a stepping stone, and I guess the interesting question about all this is sort of, you know, what's the purpose of these university courses? Is it to prepare people to work as software engineers, or is it just to introduce them to a few of the concepts and see if they like it? Because, you know, if they like it, it's not that they're going to become magically, through the process of having done a degree, you know, like ready to be software engineers. Whatever we do, sort of, they're going to have to like go and spend a year working before they know how to do work. Do you know what I mean?
Right. And that's been my goal, is to introduce people at a whole variety of levels to different concepts, from the beginning student who's not even going to be a programmer, but you know, because they've been doing so badly in their courses, and programming isn't for them, but they're, you know, sticking with the degree, and they're going to get a degree. So at least introduces them to a lot of things conceptually that will, in any event, be helpful for them if they're working or talking with programmers or working anywhere
right
in the industry. And also the high-end people get a whole mess out of this, the course. And that's one of my frustrations, is that the details of working through the assignments, all my class time is focused on people working through the details of the assignments, you know, about 80% of it.
Right.
Because I have people working and helping them, and they, you know, I'm not, you know, they get a lot out of like sticking to and learning and solving problems. But what I've always said for years and years is that I'm concerned that they feel like their success is, you know, getting the homework 2 grader or homework 3 grader, getting 100% on it, right? And then, you know, sort of the concepts are not as emphasized with that.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, and it's like you say, people, the thing they learned, well, that's one thing from the course I learned, I have to prefix bundle exec on the thing, and that made it work, and they have no idea why, and like they don't actually maybe even care, and it's like not conceptually related to anything, and it's I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what we what we do about that.
Right.
I mean,
But we did,
go on.
we did all join up, join up on this bandwagon because this was more real world oriented and not as sort of abstract as at least for me, the sort of other textbook software engineering. So I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
And I think the students do get a lot out of it. I'm not.
Well, and I think it's Armando and Dave mentioned this in the actual course, and as they review the old students, it's the students who carry on and stay in academia don't appreciate the course as much as those who leave and go out. And it's only after there's been a couple of years in industry and like, wow, yeah, that kind of banging my head against all this legacy code or whatever. Actually, that's what I'm doing in the industry, and that's kind of maybe they're not going to appreciate it until further down the line. I think you're right. There's still room to get closer to those, to support those, to have the assignments support understanding the concepts better. And I think the interesting thing is we're doing this Elixir mob at the moment. So I don't know if you know the Elixir programming language.
Go on. No.
So it's a functional programming language that has no classes and no objects, and but it's the new thing, or one of the new things because there's so many. But there's Elixir, and then Phoenix is its equivalent of like Rails. So Elixir is the programming language, Phoenix is the framework, and it's based on Erlang, and which is the underlying like telecommunications coding system. And so the kind of selling points are it's got like a Ruby-like syntax, and because it doesn't have any state, it doesn't have any objects, you can like build very performant systems in it because it's all this pure functional stuff. Anyway, so we've got some people in the Agile Ventures community who are quite excited about it. We've got one person who's doing wants to do a project in it, and they actually got like free access to some materials on Udemy, which there's a guy called Stephen Grinder who basically he does an introduction to Elixir and Phoenix, and this is Udemy course.
Okay, and you're calling it Elixir, but it looks to me like it's Elixir, or is that just that's
probably a Britishism?
It's a British, awful.
That's okay. No, because
How would you say it, Michael?
I guess Elixir.
Elixir. Yeah.
Elixir.
Probably adding and putting in an extra syllable, but that as far as me looking it up.
Don't get me started on aluminium. It's anyway, but yeah. But this is the Udemy course here, and I mentioned this partly because I think this is a really high quality course. Actually, it's really well done, and it's also I mentioned it because Armando talked about how there was some guy, I forget who has like an HTML, who's become like a millionaire apparently from like putting his HTML and JavaScript and Ruby basic course on Udemy. And I think Armando 3 or 4 months ago was like, this guy is he's hardly doing anything compared to all the stuff we've done. And you remember. The interesting thing about this Elixir thing is, this guy, he kind of, I don't know if I can find like a little example. That's the wrong thing. Like if we just find, I can't find what's a good one. He kind of, I think he has a nice mix. Like the whole thing is basically, he's in the coding environment and he's doing the coding. And that is the main focus. But then he's bringing in balsamic images. I wonder if I can sort of quickly find one. So he's in the editor. I don't know if you can hear him there, but I'll mute him. But so he's going through, and you can see this all looks a bit like Ruby, which is one of the appealing things. Yeah, but here we go. This is exactly it. He basically intersperses his coding examples with little diagrams like this, kind of showing what's going on. And he speaks slowly and clearly, and he's sort of friendly, and he's sort of going into the documentation from Elixir, and then he's kind of going into the command line environment and making things happen. And it's like he's got a really nice balance, I think, here between just making it work and like showing you how it works, and then occasionally introducing the conceptual stuff. And he does some like quite high level conceptual stuff. For example, in these things like object oriented versus functional programming. If we go along in here, yeah, here we go. Like he's doing this demo of building a card system, and showing, here's how we do this with an object-oriented approach, and we'd have the classes and the instances and this, that, or the other, and then other bits and pieces. But now let's contrast that with this whole functional programming approach and how that's different, and so on and so forth. And to be honest, when I as good as some of Armando's and entertaining as some of Armando's Davis lectures are, I think there's kind of a disconnect, right? The Armando's lectures, they're sort of designed to be sat down and kind of watch from a distance, and they have these occasional code demos. This stuff is like, it's really like the code demo is the main event, right? And then there's this like occasional conceptual aside that will help you with the ongoing. So from the point of view of somebody who actually wants to learn how to code this stuff, I think this is, I mean, this, go on.
Okay. The difference is Armando's model was a lecture hall.
Yeah.
And what I'm not as convinced of, because I'm now doing something in a large lecture hall, I'm not as convinced the code demos work as well in that environment.
No.
And in some ways, and I'm assuming this boot camp on Udemy is sort of designed as an online course.
Oh, totally.
That's
totally.
like that's a one-on-one kind of environment. Even
sure.
Right.
And
I think code demo and the kind of way that you're describing it could work better there, because you really have someone has their whole screen and you have their whole attention.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I think I certainly wouldn't suggest this the Udemy thing as to be played in a big lecture hall with. I mean, although you could have a big lecture hall if everybody had a computer, they could be. But part of the whole, and interesting thing, I think there are similar ones for. I mean, this is. I don't know if this is the one that. First of all, what do I know him from? I think this is the one that Armando was complaining about. He's got like this $200 Rails course available on here. But yeah, I mean, part of the whole appeal of this Udemy course is it's you there. You can stop at the. I mean, it's got like autoplay. Basically, it's got the over edX. It's got the features like you just start watching this and it kind of like auto queues up the next thing. It's got like some of the Audacity style features that I feel edX sorely lacks. And yeah, it's like a one-on-one thing. You can work through it step by step and you pause it and so on. And it's just yeah, I really can't see the advantage of bringing, like, why anybody would get 150 people together in a lecture hall and try and do anything with them, to be honest. I mean, it's but yeah. So it's kind of it's for example, I mean, with things like this, and we got this as sort of a bonus for free. And I'm usually kind of, what's the word? I'm usually kind of I poo-poo like courses. Like I kind of say, oh, if I'm going to learn Elixir, I just throw myself into it and start doing a project in it. But I have to say, with this class, and I'm working through it on times too, and then we're doing this mob, and that's people are enjoying it, and then we're coming together to sort of practice some of the examples. I'm feeling like, actually, compared to the previous Elixir tutorial that I walked through, the text-based one, this is really preparing me quite well to kind of hit the ground running, to get started on this Elixir project. And I like going through it, I kind of feel like that's sort of like, rather than this textbook, I mean, although one of the downsides I would say to this course is that they don't have like a PDF text walkthrough, but this is the kind of model that in some ways I would, it's kind of clear, like when I'm in here with this environment, if I can compare this with the kind of Kindle environment, like we can contrast like this, where I've got a lot of space on the screen, I can focus on these little things. Like if we can contrast this with, let's say I'm a student who's trying to work through the, now is Kindle actually starting up here? Where's it going to come in? No, Kindle is going to be, says it's running and not running. Yeah, and Kindle is not working. But you know what I mean. You know what the textbook looks like on Kindle. The set. What is going on there? It's so busy.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and it's interesting. I mean, that relates to sort of the printed page sort of legacy of where it comes from, which I'm sympathetic to, with Armando saying, well, we can't use Markdown because you really need all the typographic stylistic things that you know, that Markdown doesn't provide, and which is true if you're trying to do like real sort of book-oriented page layout.
Yeah, right. But like, who is that book-oriented page layout serving? Like, you know, this is like when I'm just like, why can't I get this in like 2-page up? Oh, God, you know, I mean, the Kindle, it's like, give me a bloody PDF. But can we? What is?
Well, there's that, and then also there's, you know, it's still using the screen as a piece of paper,
right?
Which is, you know, which is a good starting point, but
there we go.
So the ending point, yeah. I mean, I have students who say, like, you know, oh, I got, you know, they have the PDF and they don't want to deal with the Kindle version, and I'm like, you know, they found wherever they found the PDF, because the PDF they found is likely an old one, and I'm
right.
You know, they say, well, the PDF is so much easier to use, and I'm like, well, you know, what do I say?
Yeah, absolutely, it is. I mean, I'm just saying, like, we're in a situation like this, and I'm working through it. I mean, I think it's fantastic that Armando's updated these to be GISTs instead of that pastebin stuff that it used to be. But there's, you know, I mean, the sort of things that we're saying that Markdown can't support is, well, it's not going to give us these little sidebars, and it's not going to give us these little summaries in different colors, and maybe the tables are difficult to do, and so on. But I don't know who that's kind of supporting. Like, at least for me personally, rather than this, I would so much, any day of the week, if I'm going to learn something, you know, give me this, you know. And, you know, maybe as an addition, like, I mean, I think if we go to, and he hasn't done it, that was Markdown, but he's got, can I find the, I asked him, and he showed me, go to the little discussion section in here, announcements, request Q&A. I thought I asked about PDF. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so he's got, like, all the code set out in here, and it's got different, it's got on different branches, so you're doing stuff. But yeah, so he doesn't, but you know, this is how I want to see my code. I want to see the code like this, and I want this kind of white space around it, so that I can focus on here. I really don't want to see the code here.
Well, then that's an interesting design issue. One of the things, when I did all my document and typesetting kind of work and research, you know, and I spent a lot of time with graphic designers, they did talk about, you know, laying out pages as basically dealing with white space,
right,
and not the content, and like where to, you know, and directing your eye and stuff. So there is, you know, so there's a you know, maybe a design issue too,
right,
as opposed to just saying, hey, it's paper versus screen. But there's a lot of busyness in the design of this, putting a lot of stuff and stuffing it all in there, and it might violate some good design principles.
I mean, this is, I mean, now after, you know, I've got this down now so that I could start, like, okay, now I've got some white space around here. I can focus on this kind of like step by step. I mean, Armando's got, like, you know, he's got the screencasts that go at different places in the book, but it's just interesting to contrast, you know, the book format with the bits of stuff and the kind of like the very busy, lots of different icons and all of that stuff going on, and it's very, you know, academic. And there are sort of here and there are the screencasts. It's kind of, it's a bit overwhelming compared to the setup here, where, you know, it's just, there's an easy flow through the thing. You know, I just feel like I'm kind of working easily through it. There's, you know, it's clear where I go to next. Go on, Michael.
The book that, I think you have the book, CSS Secrets by Leia Veru. She's a MIT grad student,
right,
from Greece. I think she says in her book that it's actually, she made it all with HTML.
She did, yeah.
Like the layout and everything.
Yes, absolutely.
But she's kind of like a front-end web guru.
Yes, that's her thing.
But her book is pretty attractive looking.
Yeah, it is. I
think you have it, right?
I have it on some other computer, maybe. I don't know if I have it here. I just want to get, if we just like see inside. I mean, the interesting thing with her book, though, or when we see inside, is Yeah, there's still a kind of, you know, I'm there.
You go to the Kindle edition.
Yeah, I'm there kind of reading it.
Doesn't let you look inside. It does.
It doesn't. Oh, it does now. Here we go. Yeah. I don't know that it will be laid out quite so nicely on this one. But yeah, I mean, yeah, she's. I think there's something, you know, from a kind of a motivational stance. Like, you know, I spend some of my lunchtimes working through books step by step. I mean, a better example, I would say, or not a better example, or an example, you know, we're working through the Avdi Grimm Confident Ruby as a part of our Ruby mob, and you know, he uses this simple layout, right, like this, and he's got the colored stuff on the code examples, and to me, this is like, yes, you know, and I can work through these single examples, and he does step by step, you know.
It's like you're in a code editor, right?
Right. I mean, this is very pleasant. You know, it requires, for me personally, a slightly higher level of motivation to work through this than it does on this, that I just sort of sit there and go along with the flow, and I actually see, you know, him making occasional little mistakes and so on, what have you. I mean, I think, you know, I'm very happy to draw as a confident programmer. I'm very happy to draw stuff from this one. But when I think about you know, people who are less confident with coding, I think this is and we've got one, you know, a recent bootcamp graduate and she's absolutely loving this this environment and this Udemy thing. And what's ironic here is we've got all this time we're repackaging the existing edX course to kind of go out there and this, that, and the other. Is that, yeah, I mean, I feel like the experience that this delivers is the one that I would like to consume compared to what we've got. Although they haven't got any AutoGraders here, there's, you know, it's not connected to that bigger ecosystem. Anyway, there we go. That was
that example. And you're bringing that up because you are looking to learn Elixir or Elixir.
Yeah. I mean,
as opposed to saying that this is like a sort of a great next thing, even though some people are saying that, right?
Well, I mean, I think it's
because the reason I'm looking at it is that when I get it to the Udemy page, the course is on sale for $15 in the next for the next 24 or 48 hours instead of 50.
Yeah, I think it's always on sale, so I'm not sure.
Oh, okay, so it's not. It's like one of.
But you also you can get it for free if you sign up for the Agile Ventures Premium and so on. So it's but yes, but your point. You were thinking about because there's a sale on, maybe you would sign up for it.
Well, I'm just wondering if it was highly because one of the things I am interested in looking at is seeing this object-oriented and functional programming sort of debate, because I was like dragged in kicking and screaming in the object-oriented in some ways. And, you know, other than the programming stuff that I taught myself in high school, all my stuff in school was list-based.
Okay. Yeah.
It's all functional based. And it wasn't until I got on a real project in graduate school and I used Clue that I did any object-oriented programming.
Yeah, MIT used to do Scheme, right?
Well, Scheme was later. Sussman, Jerry Sussman was my teacher. He was a freshman sort of teacher, so to speak. It was his first year teaching, and I had him for the circuits course. Because all of us computer science had to take electrical engineering, the basic electrical engineering courses. And I had Sussman for circuits. So it was before the Scheme. In fact, the stuff that I was working on, we had a variant of Lisp called Muddle, MDL. It was actually called Muddle, and then we renamed it to MDL. Scheme was sort of built a lot on that.
I like his book, SICP or whatever.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Well, and going back to for me, although like I've been hearing kind of Elixir Phoenix and it sounds that's interesting, I'd be kind of almost pushing it away, because like for me, the thing that I'm kind of really interested in is like finding systems to solve things for people and like solving their problems. And so kind of which technology base you happen to use is perhaps less important. And, you know, I've developed a certain level of skill in Rails and, you know, JavaScript and Ruby and so on. So it's kind of like, you know, I don't feel like, I mean, I know it's good in general to be learning new languages and you know, just to be learning generally is great, but it wasn't my focus. And so I wasn't going to get involved in it. And then partly the people were saying like, oh, Elixir Mob. And I was kind of like, oh, you know, I want to encourage this project that's sort of starting off in Agile Ventures. And then I agreed to run the Elixir Mob. And so as a result, I then started doing the course. And what was, and I was kind of, in my mind, there was a bit of kind of like, you know, oh, you know, we're just leaving that we're getting back to like, you know, C and procedures. But I think it's kind of interesting seeing the way that he's developing these apps in the Elixir course, and the domain modeling is still there. You've still got the concept, the entities there, but they're represented as structures. And I think in some ways, you've still got the objects, right? The objects still exist. You can still build an object, as in build a data structure. What you're not doing is you're not having any instance state, and you're not having an entity that you can refer to that has components that can change out from under you, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So you basically end up with, go on.
Well, I mean, and this is getting too far astray, but in some cases, that is something that you want to model. So I would ask, like, well, how is that modeled when you do have the equivalent of instances?
Well, it basically, well, what happens is that when you need to change something, so say that you've got, let's say that you had a user account and that the user's email changes, right? But so from an Elixir point of view, you would never have a kind of reference to an instance in memory that would at one point in your code execution have the first email and a later point have the second email. That just wouldn't happen. So there would be no change. You still got support persistence. So the fact that the user wants to update their email, right? I mean, that goes through and it gets persisted on the database. But if you pull the user object out of the database, that user object will only ever have, I mean, it'll be a struct in Elixir, will only ever have that email. You can't mutate it, right?
Okay.
And they're kind of arguing, actually, there's, you know, and they're building whole applications in Elixir and Phoenix. There is actually, I mean, having entities with state that can be mutated is kind of a convenience, right? It's not actually required to get anything done. And what from the point of the Elixir functional thing, it's kind of saying, actually, that being able to mutate the state, it's actually a bug rather than a feature.
Okay. I mean, my issue is looking at the time, and I have a lot of questions, but I also, on my other screen, I have some stuff associated with it and the debate that you're talking about. So it's probably just as efficient for me to like look and read before I ask like some really basic questions.
Well, maybe, yeah.
I'm just wondering. I mean, what would be what's of interest to me is whether some of my uncomfortableness with all this sort of object-oriented paradigms, whether this gets at the heart of it, or this is like sort of another interesting side issue. So I have to look at that, and that's why I'm asking some questions. But we can. This is a good start.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, and yeah, looking at the time, I think there were clearly no other burning issues that were fighting their way to the top today. Anything else that I mean, you've had your spring break. There's nothing else like that I need to help you with logistically or administratively or anything.
Yeah, things are good. We have the combined course, except for, you know, the usual hiccups. Things are sort of working well enough. And I'll make it through the end of the semester, and then we'll see what happens next year.
Yeah.
And
well, I mean, maybe it's a careful, you know, speaking too soon. In some ways, it sounds either you've got used to the bumps, or we have managed to iron out some of the bumps over the last. It's like 3 or 4 years that we've been doing this. We've kind of got into some sort of comfort zone.
Well, I know, right, and for me, you know, someone coming in new may like not know which things to embrace.
But
I know where the wrinkles are, and I know how to smooth them over. and I'm keeping on the less advanced side. I mean, Rose is probing at some of the trickier subtleties, and that's not something that I'm focusing on. And I think with okay reason.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I think we're good. I mean, would love to get you involved in the you know, we've got all these mobbing sessions going on with Elixir and Ruby and so on. I know you've got a busy schedule, but you know,
and that, you know, that does start to end in the next month.
Yeah.
So I mean, we'll be in touch, but keep probing on that, because I am always interested. I mean, I was always interested in finding out what you're doing. Which I sort of see, because it's like, okay, well, what if I move away from this? What, you know, what next? Especially if it could be bringing in a little bit of money, and enjoyment.
Yeah, totally. We're starting to have some small trickles of paying projects through Agile Ventures. There's one actually about doing a calculus library in Ruby that you might even be interested in.
Interesting. Okay.
If you were,
you mean just another sentence or two on that?
Basically, we have a online tutoring service who want to be able to generate dynamically generate problems for in algebra for calculus. So, for example, you know, we want to be able to generate these, like, differentiate x squared, and then be able to mark the student's answer automatically. And so it turns out there's no calculus library in Ruby, so they're paying like micro installments for if we can like write Ruby code that will do the differentiation.
And they're doing it symbolically.
Yes.
Okay.
And I was just going to wrap up on the interesting thing about where I've got to with the Elixir thing, separate from the philosophy, is just that having got this far in the course now and gained some confidence in that Udemy course and gained some confidence with Elixir and doing some different bits and pieces, it's kind of like, oh wow, this is kind of fun, and I'm now it's totally switched around my, you know, mentality there, which is like, oh, I can have some fun doing this, and if we can build some stuff. I mean, I think what's interesting there is, having got down some of the key important concepts of Elixir, I am anticipating that actually, because it leverages a lot of you know, great functional stuff that exists in Ruby, and actually, you know, maybe I could start being quite productive in Elixir, and maybe the performance of the Elixir systems that were built might anyway, we'll see. I'll let you know in the coming weeks how that evolves.
Okay. Very good.
Cool.
All good. Thanks for the Friday afternoon break.
You're welcome. Good to see you. Yeah, we'll catch up with you again next week. Michael, any thoughts?
No.
Okay. Have a great weekend. See you next week. Bye for now. Take care.